Good morning and good afternoon and good evening and good night as we're reaching across the world at our bizarre times that we do the astrology shows at. We are going to be doing Astrology 2.0 this morning for me. I want to say hi and a special call out of hello to everyone from North America who set alarm clocks. Some of you are up at 2 o'clock in the morning and 3 and 4 in the morning to be here with us live for the live stream. I love you guys. You're awesome. Today, we're going to be launching a new segment of the Astrology 2.0. I very humorously thought we could tackle the topic in just one show. And then Amina and Jules and Megan started going through the stuff, and Amina called me up basically this week and was like, okay, like, you understand that we have about 16 hours worth of material to cover. We can't do this in one show. So this is going to be a series, and it's going to be called The Waves. And what we're going to be looking at, let me backtrack and say, a conversation started in our astrology chat group talking about the generations. And generations is a very confusing word because everyone considers a generation differently. It's a very loaded term, and that's why we decided to call it the waves. Wave X, Wave Y, Wave Z, the new alphas who are just coming in after 2012, these new ones, and of course the baby boomers. What is playing out right now in roles, and specifically we're going to be looking at the outer planets, the outside ones, the ones that literally affect generations, not just a single. It's not like Venus or Mars and that moves so quickly it affects such a, each small segment differently. The conversation got really, really interesting. And we've brought Anne in on this one because, of course, Anne deals with so many kids and so many generations from the essence level and the homeopathic level. What we're seeing when we started correlating the data between looking at our own children, that when they were born, and we started kind of cross-referencing different things that were going on in their birth years, etc., it became very apparent that there's a lot going on with these waves that's not just millennials. It's not just easily tossed off as, oh, it's because they watch too much TV and video games, or it's because of the changes in schooling, etc. So we decided, yes, we thought we'd do a show on it, and then we realized that there's no possible way of doing it in one show. So today is the hook, as Amina calls it. Amina isn't with us yet. She will be joining us as soon as she can. She will be here. She's just delayed. She had a busy day today. This is the hook. This is the hook where we're going to just run through some of the basics. We're going to run through some of the basic definitions, look at some of the basic characteristics of some of the planets again, kind of review some of this information we've already gone through in previous shows, and talk a little bit about these generations, basically of the times that they run. So what is classified as wave X, Y, Z, boomers, alphas, etc. So hi guys, so glad you're here. It's like late at night for Jules over there in Australia, and it's like ridiculously early in the morning for Megan over on the east coast of Canada. But at least you're on the East Coast of Canada, you're not on the West Coast. So, Jules, my darling, do you want to try and like fill in the gaps of what I just said here and maybe
Absolutely.
illuminate it a little more?
Yeah, so, I mean, we've been talking for quite a few months now since the other astrology shows, and this particular sort of kind of series, which is now a series, is very ambitious in terms of there's just so much information. So a little disclaimer, it's not going to point out particular things in everybody's charts because they're born at different times and all that sort of stuff. So this is basically an overview because definitely as adults through different generations, we are feeling the effects of this time and now. Like we've just had the discussions where we just want this to be over. We can, you know, we've got 1 foot in the past and 1 foot in the future, and things are really foggy right now. And the discussion came up around kids and how they must be feeling, because we know as kids ourselves, growing up with our parents' generation, you're not born into this life with a blank slate. You have past memories, you have thoughts as a toddler. You may not be able to express those. And same with the kids, like they may not have, their parents may not be awake, or they don't have the words to kind of explain what's going on. So we wanted to sort of have a look at the astrology to see when these waves were born, and it kind of expanded to everyone being alive at this point in time. So it has
It started
totally
off
bigger
with
than,
just our children's generations, and then we very quickly realized, you know, we can't do that. Like we just can't. It's because this is every generation alive on this planet right now, and we knew Maury would be really upset with us if we left him out.
yeah, totally. We do have a lot of our, you know, core unfuckers who are, you know, in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s as well,
Yep.
listening. So if we were just to focus on the kids, it would be a little bit unfair for everybody else. And so we're trying to cover everything. I admit it's extremely ambitious, but this particular segment will just cover the basics, and it will be aimed at people who don't really have an understanding of astrology, or a kind of like a sort of prep kindergarten kind of level. So we're really, really trying to simplify everything as much as possible. So I do apologize if we do go off on a tangent and some of the concepts will be a little bit abstract, but
Tangents are to be expected from this crew. Tangents are to be expected from this crew. In our little chat group regularly, Megan and Amina and Jules will go off, and Ann and I'll just sit there going, I don't know what they're talking about, but they're excited. They're excited, but it's like it's astrology speak, and might as well be Greek. So they're going to dumb it down for our level and keep it to the simple as much as they can. And it's not going to happen. I know we're going to get into some in-depth stuff. So first off, outer planets. Define for us what you guys call the outer planets.
The outer planets, like traditionally, people, cultures, civilizations have been watching the stars and planets since the start of human time, right? Or since the start of time, whether we call them humans or not. How long we've been here, it could be thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. And we've always looked at the stars. We've always been in awe of sunrise, or middle of the day, or with an eclipse, or with sunset, or how the moon shines at night. We've got the basic sort of inner planets that we can see with our visible eyes. But these outer planets are really quite relatively new to astrology in the scheme of things, and they're the ones that we call transpersonal planets or trans-Saturnian planets, which are the ones that we can't see with our eyes without the use of some sort of instrumentation. So yes, they were discovered at various points in time, and we'll go through the slides to actually pinpoint the dates and that sort of stuff. And we're just starting to see the effects of them, what we have for hundreds of years. And there is a bit of a bit of a division between types of astrology. So you've got some types of astrology which only look at the planets that we can see, and then you've got other types of astrology that just focus on these outer planets at a sort of collective kind of soul level and generational level. So let me just start. I've got like 3 devices going at once. So I'm going to try and share my screen, and I've got to work out how to do this. So just bear with me. Keep talking.
So the three outer planets we're going to be talking about is Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto.
And Pluto, yeah. So let me.
But it is a planet. Damn it, Pluto is a planet. You can't take my planet away, fuckers.
So I'm gonna share this presentation if I can get it going.
Dee, speaking of Pluto, did you know that when it got demoted into dwarf status, it was actually at the end of a weekend-long conference when the majority of the people who would be voting had gone home because it was like the Sunday afternoon?
No. Oh, so they pulled a Congress.
Yeah.
They actually pulled an American U.S. Congress or a British Parliament. Wait till everyone has gone home for the long weekend, and then put forward an important vote so you can push whatever. Which is what, like, sorry, we're going to see. Here comes tangent. Tangent number 1 right now. Why? That's always been my question, because something like that happens. There's obviously an agenda behind it somewhere. Why would you wait till everyone's gone home to vote on something that is major? We grew up in school. My generation, we grew up in school. Pluto is a planet. It is a planet. That's the way it is. And then it's like, oh no. I remember when the answer level, Pluto's not really a planet. What? Excuse me? What importance could that play? Like, that's one of the things that just my brain can't wrap itself around. Why would they do that? What possible agenda could be behind something like that?
Well, if you think about the timing of it, it was not very long before Pluto would have ingressed into Capricorn. So they don't mind when, relationships are being distorted, when there's, AIDS running rampant and religion and philosophy is being challenged. But when the structures of government, when these things are going to start being, challenged and broken apart and disassembled so that something better can be built, they're like, well, no, I don't want that taken down because I don't benefit from this. So let's just hide the information and shift the focus off of this, and nobody will notice.
Interesting.
Okay, so we've got this children learn what they live slider. Can everyone see my computer?
Yep.
And Dorothy Lord Nolte wrote this in 1954. So it's a really, really old poem about what children live with and what they learn from their parents. So following on from the discussion we had in the astrology chat, it kind of made sense to put this up as well. Plus also the updated version, which is specifically for kids in this generation in 2017. So you're all familiar with this poem, I hope. Danny?
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
I remember it hanging up in my auntie's house, and as a kid I would read it. Like, it was just up on the wall in the kitchen. And
my grandmother had one up in her kitchen too. And it was all like, it was a really old faded print too, like to the point, but I can remember by the time I was 12, it was like you had to really look carefully to even be able to read the words anymore. It was so faded.
Exactly. And I just went, that's so true. Even as a kid, I would read this and go, yeah, that's true. This is what's happening. The next slide is specifically, if I can get it working. Oh my God. Here we go.
There you go.
This is specifically for kids who have gone through issues with, you know, drug addicted parents and things like that. But I do feel that it is kind of relevant for now a little bit. So it's the updated version of it. We could probably talk about some of that. I think, you know, possibly, you know, kids living with shame, they learn to hide who they really are. I think we're in a society now where kids are expressing themselves a lot more, especially those kids post 2000, you know, the kids coming through. Generally, I know your kids and my kids, we're pretty liberal, and, you know, we want to, you know, they're really excited and, you know, want to conquer the world in some respects. But yeah, some of the other kids are quite overwhelmed with the situation. So maybe Anne can, you know, kind of jump in and talk about, if you don't mind, talking about some of the younger kids that are coming through. Both my kids are a little bit older now. They're both kind of teenagers. So I don't really have the perspective of some of those younger kids kind of coming through. So even Danny, you can jump in and sort of, you know.
Do you want to talk about that now, Jules?
Well, just briefly, and then we'll get into more detail once we get into the kind of the later slides. Just an overview of.
Okay, so
some of the stuff.
I suppose the work that I do is what I do most of the time is I talk to therapists and sometimes to parents, but mostly therapists and teachers about how we can manage this interface between the old paradigm and these new paradigm kids. And what I say to people is that these new kids are not actually running the software to deal with the old paradigm. They can't do it. They absolutely cannot do it. And it's not that they're bold. It's not that they're, you know, it's not that they're broken. I mean, when I started working with kids, I thought my job was to fix them so that they could go back out in the world and behave. And that was way back when I started in homeopathy. I knew that there was a new wave coming through, and that was my life purpose in a way, was to deal with this wave to help them to a certain extent. And it's been it's been rough because in my opinion, like we are behind energetically. We're behind where these kids were designed. It's like they're loaded with an OS before they come in. And what I saw in the early 90s was the OS wasn't lining up with what they were meeting when they came into the planet. So there was a generation born between 1990 and 2000 who were particularly out of alignment with the energy that they came in contact with, and developed all kinds of symptoms. And this was before we got into the serious vaccination damage, which we're seeing at the moment. But that's the main problem that I see, is that we're right in this kind of, it's the interface between this old paradigm and this new paradigm that we have the potential for a new paradigm right in front of us. And these kids, their job actually is to embody this new energy. It is to not fit in. It is to show people that the system is broken, that everything is broken, and that we have to, it's like they are plants of unknown origin. That's another analogy I use for parents. It's like you've got a seed and you don't know what the plant is. You know, what would you do as a good gardener? You'd move it around until you see it thrive.
Yep.
So one of the hardest jobs actually at the moment is getting to the parents to trust that the kids know what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just nodding all the way through going, And when you particularly said that, you know, your initial job was to kind of fix these children, the first thought that popped into my mind was, the kids don't need fixing. It's the older generations that need to come through the journey.
Exactly. Now, getting that through to the older generation, of course, is a whole other story, because they don't trust in the life process. So, I come across kids who it's like their electrical system is a little bit dicey. So you know, they have this feel, they are easily overwhelmed, too many, you know, too much input, and they'll just blow. Now, we have adults like that, of course, too, but, you know, there are more and more kids are coming in like that. They just cannot deal with, because they're not designed. They're not designed to fit into this horrible old system. They are designed to be free, to do what they want to do when they want to do it. And they thrive if they're taken out of school and allowed to be who they are. Now, getting the adults to, it's really interesting, because this brings up all the fear that the adults have around, you know, surviving in this world, because they see, yes, oh my God, if I take my kids out of school, oh my God, they'll end up on the streets as a hobo, oh my God. You know, that's really interesting. But this is the job, this is another part of the job of these kids, is actually to expose the fears of this previous generation. It is to bring them into, to bring up every fear the parent has, that those children will just stick their finger on it, you know. So yeah, it's a tough interface at the moment. And I just see kids freaking out all over the place. The best thing that we can do is take the pressure right off them, take them out of school, put them in a teepee, let them hang out with nature.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just nodding at every single part of it. So I brought up this next slide about the lower and higher octave planets. So if basically got the personal planets, which are Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and with Saturn being the boundary planet. It has 1 foot in this world, 1 foot out in the other. So it's the last visible planet that we can see. However, if you look at on a keyboard with, you know, just take, for example, musical theory with the C note or any note, and you go exactly 1 octave up from that. It's the same tone, but at a higher frequency. And these what these planets are doing. So basically, Uranus can be explained as a mental body. If you've got a really high active Uranus or however you want to say it, I don't like saying Uranus because it's, you know, it's the butt of all jokes pretty much.
Jokes, exactly. No pun intended.
No pun intended or pun intended. Whereas Neptune, we're talking about the fogginess of Neptune, and Neptune being the higher octave of Venus, which is all about feeling, and it's collective feeling. So at the moment we've got Neptune in its rulership, in its ruling sign, so it's particularly strong right now. So we're getting feelings of, you know, absolute metaphysical kind of feelings, and then there are some kids and some people who just can't handle the energy. They're overwhelmed with too much feeling.
This is very true. This is, and I went through this. We talked about it yesterday, just briefly. It seems like a good portion of us had a real wild day yesterday, energetically. Mm-hmm. A lot of us were taken out. It was just emotions, like you said. It was like waves of emotions coming in. I was going through all kinds of stuff as an adult, and then I can sit there and rationalize and say, okay, I'm not really angry, because obviously I have nothing to be angry about. There's nothing happened to make me angry. So I'm feeling this anger, but it's what I call external. It's an external anger. It's like, it's something that's just coming in. It's not mine. And I dealt with Logan and Kale yesterday. Logan being 12, Kale being 9. And Logan had very, very difficult. He sat with me for about 20 minutes, and we went through a lot of our exercises where we try to help him verbalize stuff. And he never could get to a point of being able to actually verbalize truly what he was feeling, except just to say that he was overwhelmed. He was just completely overwhelmed, and it was like, I'm bored, angry, aggravated, frustrated, and tired. And those were his only 5 descriptive words he could come up with. And we went through the whole gamut of looking at it, and he was just like, but I can't, I wish I could tell you more. Mom, I can't, I have no words. I can't explain how I actually feel. And that's the overwhelming that it is right now. Yeah. And we're adults. So we think about these younger kids. And Kale, being 9, he is completely incapable of verbalizing on any level. how he feels, and you have to literally just watch him and support him as you watch him move through his day. And that's the only thing we can do. For me as a parent, it's the only thing I can do, is just supporting him as he's going through it, because he's 90% not here. 90% of that kid is not actually in this realm. It's only the barest amount of consciousness that keeps his little avatar running up and down the hallway, as Anne will know. But the rest of it, he's actually not here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's a conversation we'll get into maybe on when we actually start talking about alphas.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that.
They're taking themselves out. It's so overwhelming that they've actually removed themselves from this operating system, and they've left one little kernel that's kind of running the physicality. But the vast majority of them, they've just they're not here. They're like, this operating system fucking sucks. Here, I'll leave my avatar for you to play with, but I'm out.
You're so right about that, Danny. Just to jump in quickly, my oldest, he's an alpha. He'll be 7 next month, and I can't even imagine what it must be like for him to go to school every day in the system that it's in, with the energy that he's born with and the energy that he's navigating through right now. There is not a single day that goes by that he does not leave something at school. It's either a jacket or a sweater or his entire lunchbox or his book bag or his water bottle every day, because he's not present.
Not there.
He's not there.
My little guy's 12, and he's exactly the same. He's just kind of off planet, even though he's like the previous generation. There's still some overlap with this kind of Neptune energy.
Totally.
And he just totally gets overwhelmed with stuff and can't find the words, or he's just not there.
And they just tap out. They go through the motions, but they tap out.
Perfect. Megan, that's exactly it. They tap out. They go through the motions. As in, this will make everyone else in this house happy if I just eat my dinner and go to bed and take my bath like I'm told. Mm-hmm. But it's they're not here.
But then you ask them, what did you eat for dinner? I don't know.
No. You ask them, what did you do today?
I don't know.
And it's not that they're ignoring you. It's not that they're passing it off. It's like they literally don't.
I think they don't know because they consciously did not do it.
Exactly.
Physically they did.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah, consciously they're somewhere off in the ethers like, fuck this shit, I'm out.
Exactly. And Pluto is like the Mars-Pluto sort of octave is the desire factor. So with Mars, it's action. It's there. I'm going to do this today, or maybe you can explain it better. Danny, you're very Aryan and you're just a go-getter. Whereas Pluto is a little bit more introverted and it's very transformative and regenerative, and it's the destroyer. Essentially, when Pluto comes through one of your angles, let's just say one of your main parts of your chart, you're definitely going to feel it. And once you come out the other side, you are not going to be the same person. So anyone who has this kind of Pluto energy heavy in their chart, they're constantly regenerating themselves. They're the typical phoenix rising from the ashes all the time.
Is there anyone who is an adult who also feels like this from time to time? Because I certainly
put up your hand.
Right? Absolutely. So, this is, Jenny in the chat has just said, I'm 51, this sounds like me. Well, I'm 61 and this sounds like me. So in my opinion, people like us who don't run the compatible software or whatever, we've been coming in dribs and drabs for quite a long time. But what we're actually talking about, as far as I can make out in this show, is an actual wave of energy. So you'll have like the majority behaving or feeling like this at this time. However, if this is not, as far as I can see, a cut and dried thing, there have been, we have been coming in dribs and drabs for some time now.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's just we're not going to get into it this show, but it's kind of like a moon phase where it starts off, a new moon, and those people are, you know, they're germinating and they're growing. And then you get some people in relation to either the nodes of the moon or the nodes of these planets, basically when they cross the ecliptic. And we'll get to a slide that shows that, is that they're going to be feeling different things generally. They're in different phases of their sort of incarnation, if you want to say. So generally, yeah, everyone's going to feel it, but some people are going to be in different phases of what's going on as well.
And it's going to be real big in their faces sometimes, as we've discussed over the last few months.
Definitely. And so we'll go on to Pluto, and we'll just get through the astronomy kind of part of it. So Percy Lowell, who had the observatory in Arizona, was searching for Pluto for many years, for about 14 years prior to his death. And then another astronomer called Clyde Tombaugh actually discovered it in 1930. So the discovery date was Feb 18, 1930. Just in relation to its size, it's a sixth of the size of the Earth. In terms of orbit, it's around 248 years. Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. It's got a highly elliptical kind of orbit. It's not like the other ones. Astrologically, it spends about 11 to 32 years in each sign. So when Pluto's really close to us, take the analogy of a car. If you're sitting and looking in the distance, watching a car drive up a mountain, it looks really, really slow, right? It's probably going 60 k's an hour or whatever that is in miles. But if you're standing on the curb and a car goes past you at 60 k's an hour, it's going to seem really fast. So same with Pluto, it comes close to the Earth and then it sort of rotates out in an orbit. So some of these generations are much longer than others in terms of the Pluto sort of zodiacal generations. And we've just come through a part where Pluto was closest to the Earth in around 95. So those generations are much shorter than the other ones, and it feels like everything's kind of speeding up as a result of that. But we're getting into a phase where Pluto is going back out again, and those waves, Pluto generations, going to start to slow down once again. So I've got so many things happening at the same time. So we got Pluto's moons, there are 6, and this kind of leads into that discussion around where Pluto wasn't regarded as a planet. So there's Charon, which is almost the same size as Pluto. So it's kind of like a binary planet. Charon and Pluto are all constantly in a dance with each other, rotating around each other. And then the other ones are named after the mythology of Hades and the underworld. So I'll just skip through here because I don't want to focus. We're very much behind time. So this is what we were talking about before. In 2006, the International Astronomers Union declared that Pluto is no longer a planet. It's really interesting, Megan, that you said that, you know, it was on a Sunday afternoon, everyone had gone home. And I have to say a lot of astrologers and astronomers are up in arms, completely in arms. So I've got that little thing, you know, revolve in peace.
Yep.
From 1930 to 2006. There are still calls as of last year to actually get it reinstated. I have no idea if that's happened or not.
There was another big news article. There was another big news article just a few months ago where there's a whole pile of astronomers who are really pushing, saying, no. Pluto is a planet, and you need to officially put it back in the school books as being a planet. You can't. This is crap. Like basically, what happened in 2006 was stupid, and you have to make it a planet again.
Yeah, so it was interesting. Just after it was dropped, NASA had sent out a probe in 2015 to actually explore Pluto, and it got there and took some pictures of it. And so I've got some, funny memes about, you know, so you dumped me years ago, but now you're driving by my house real slow to check out what's going on. So I just found that quite amusing, and it's again, it's just a big joke. All right. I'm not going to go too far into the mythology. There are some people who really dig the mythology and some people who are not across it. I myself, I don't want to get into a lot of detail, but basically in Greek
That'll
mythology,
be another whole series. We'll do a whole series on the mythology of
that'll
all
be
the planets. That will be a
yeah,
separate
yeah.
series.
And between kind of astrology groups, you know, people are going to say, you know, these planets were arbitrarily named by you know, the by astrologers, and you know they're irrelevant. And I'm not going to get into that conversation, but basically, there is definitely resonance with Pluto being like an 8th house planet, and relating to the 8th house is related to death and taxes and transformation and unearthing of minerals. So it's related to miners and oil and things like that.
Interesting.
So moving on, this little quote from Frank Herbert, which is basically kind of sums up Pluto. It does bring a lot of fear in people as well. Sometimes it can just hit you out of nowhere. But I think the thing is that you need to move through it.
Absolutely. And that's my favorite quote from, I've used the litany against fear since the 80s. Like since the first time I read the books, I have quoted this, and I've actually used it in my own mind. Like when you have those moments, like litany against fear. Yep.
Yeah, totally. So once we get through this, and I'll go into the astrology of it. So how it's used into astrology, it's just some of the key sort of keywords that are used. So generally with any planet, astrologically, has got, you know, higher and lower manifestations. So, you know, if someone's having Pluto cross a particular angle, it could be a really positive, cathartic experience or regenerative experience. But for others, it can be pretty earth-shattering for them. So just some of the keywords there, what it represents. So generally on a collective level, it does affect generations. So this is definitely a generational planet. You know, in 2008, when Pluto ingressed into Capricorn, it just went into Capricorn, there was a massive fire in one of the Hollywood studios, which housed about 500,000 artists of their original tapes.
Yep.
That happened just as Pluto was entering Capricorn. So that's, you know, pretty major kind of stuff happens when Pluto changes signs, and that energy changes. It's transformative. And we can probably attest to some of the changes since 2008.
Well, that's 2008. You have the fall, the collapse, the financial collapse that happened. A lot of the hidden stuff that was brought into power legally that happened during 2008, and it was very. When you look at the negative, it was fear. 2008 was the year of fear because of the financial stuff, destruction, control, secrecy. It was all about the secrecy. There's so many laws were passed in 2008 to bail out the banks in these insurance companies, etc., and to re-manipulate the fiat currencies. There you go, manipulation, power, violence, disruptive, vindictiveness. And there was very much an aspect of vindictiveness that went on in 2008 throughout all this power structure and secret movings of power. There was very much a vindictiveness and death, of course. We saw the death of certain agencies. We saw the death of certain countries that were taken. Iceland, Ireland, Greece. These countries literally saw their financial death happen. And then you have exactly the manipulation, the control, the disruption that came in with that. That's really interesting. I hadn't realized that about 2008. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, so that's when it ingressed into Capricorn, and it's Capricorn's ruled by Saturn, which is basically forms the structure of this reality. So it's definitely form and structure is Saturnian, and Pluto is just coming through and destroying that. So we're seeing reality break down. We're seeing
Really interesting.
lots of things just regenerate. So there could be some real positives out of this, but there is a lot of fear, and there's a lot of fear porn, and there's a lot of stuff going on in that negative kind of manifestation at the moment.
Yeah.
So Amina, are you ready to talk about Neptune? Because we're coming into just the overview of Neptune, just to change gears a little bit.
Yeah. So here's our Neptune. Isn't he cute?
He's adorable.
Okay, well, his mythology is Neptune is the king of the sea. So what lies below the surface is also something that we consider. It's next to Pluto, and we've got its discovery in 1846 by the French astronomer Urbain Leverrier. I don't know how to pronounce that. But basically, we've got gaseous giants, and he's the largest, most outer gaseous giant. And so he kind of like rules the water, the sea, the things that we can't see, the mist, the fog. So he takes about 164 years to go all the way around the zodiac. Sometimes he spends 15 years in a sign, sometimes 14, sometimes 13. So it's not exactly regular. And at the moment, he's about 13 years per sign. Then we've got, whoa. So basically, when Neptune is affecting us, either by transit to our planets, especially personal planets, or going through the sign for a whole generation, we tend to have illusions and disillusions going on in different themes. And we'll look into a bit about how those themes come about for each sign. But what we have to do with Neptune is we can't really resist its influence. Like most of these outer planets, you can't go against what's happening to you. Something's coming in and something's going out. And what we have to realize is that we are going to face something that's inside ourselves. So with Neptune, what we're facing is, where are we disillusioned, and what illusions have we set up on our life, and which spiritual type of path are we going to move into? We have to look at life from another angle. We can't see things just as they are, like in a Saturnian way, just looking at the physical. We've got to look deeper and deeper until we fully understand. And what it tends to do is, anywhere it touches, we don't really notice when it actually happens, but we realize that things just seem to dissolve. So for instance, if you have it going over your Venus, or you're a lady, or you're in a relationship with a man, it goes over your sun, we tend to assume that whatever love that you had for that person just dissolves, or that person just seems to disappear from your life without any cause or reason or action. It just dissolves. It just, somehow or other, you can't put a date on it. So what we have is experiences of Neptune, which can feel like I've just recently had Neptune go over my Mars, and I experienced burnout. I just had no energy. I had no drive, and it being in Neptune, in Pisces, which Neptune rules, is like, well, it was like, when is this going to pass? When is this going to pass? And the thing is it's just telling you to look deeper within yourself and understand your own sense of spirituality, your soul's longings. What is it that you really want to do, not what you're telling yourself to do. So that's kind of like how you can feel more fulfilled when you deal with Neptune, is to go a bit deeper. All right, next slide.
Absolutely. I just want to add quickly that Neptune went into Pisces in 2011. So, and I know you put a lot of effort into all the movies and things that have come out, but we had things like Aquaman come out since then, and we've got Moana and all those
Frozen.
Frozen, we've got all those movies. So the
Yeah.
entertainment industry kind of, because it is about glamour and illusion and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So there is
Neptune rules
direct-
the entertainment industry
it
because
rules the entertainment industry,
because
which is
that's our
really,
form
really
of escapism. So we need those kinds of illusions sometimes to break away from reality. We want to escape within boundaries. We try and escape within a story, a movie, a fantasy world, music,
Video
cartoons,
games.
anything that drugs, whatever it is. We want to get away from the mundane world. So we got Greek Poseidon, god of the seas, brother to Zeus, god of the sky, and Hades, god of the underworld. So Neptune mythology, I mean, all the planets regarding mythology, I wouldn't say I'm an expert at all because I tend to breeze through mythological things. But I know Megan and Jules have a bit more info on that. So maybe one of you two could explain a bit more about the mythology.
That's the last slide for Neptune, and I think we just said that because we're running a little bit behind time. But
A lot behind time.
a lot behind time, but that's quite okay. It's very Neptunian at the moment. Megan, are you ready to talk about Uranus?
Sorry, I was behind time. I got stuck in a jam.
It's
Sure,
okay.
go ahead.
It's okay.
Okay, so Uranus was the first outer planet discovered. The first planet that was found that we could see, or could not see, sorry, with our eyes, because, you know, as we discussed earlier, Saturn is the boundary for that. It's interesting mythology, and it's the first planet that was, you know, discovered with modern technology via a telescope. Nice. I didn't see that slide yet.
It's awesome.
And as we touched on earlier, astrologers prefer to say Uranus or Uranus instead of Uranus because who wants to say anus that many times a day or week or whatever. So briefly on the mythology, Uranus comes from a pre-god deity. He was basically just the personification of the sky. And, you know, out of sky is born time once, you know, the union of time and space comes. And then now we start having, you know, things. Typically, he's associated with other sky gods. And it's interesting that Uranus was castrated in a lot of the myths. And then you see his character kind of going down into the underworld with the castration. And I think that kind of ties into the whole like patriarchy. Yeah, like, you know, once you don't have that male genitalia anymore, so we're going to demote you down there and just kind of shove you off to the side and nobody's going to care about you.
Okay, we'll go into the next slide. So this is a little bit astrological, but Megan, go ahead.
So in astrology, Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius and also of the 11th house. So it has to do with society, the collective, the way that we interact with the group rather than more intimate relationships. That's more of like a Libra 7th house thing. Air signs all connect with how we connect. So this is kind of like, since it's the third air sign, it's the last one on the road. So it's like the higher level of connection. It's also where we find hopes and dreams because this is where we have that grand vision of the future and we see where we want to go, but we don't quite know how we get there. And that fits with the Uranian theme because it's very unpredictable. You think it's coming sideways and it really comes from the bottom up. So the trajectory can be kind of hard to predict.
Definitely. So Uranus is like that rapid change. It's that shock value. It's the lightning bolt. It's a lightning bolt of innovation. It's that higher mind.
Flash of genius.
The genius.
Flash of genius. I like that.
It's a regressed memory. It's the memory that we come into in this incarnation as well. So it's not, you know, generally Mercury is that, you know, that's a table, that's a chair. that's a computer, whereas Uranus is like the non-verbal mental capacity. So generally lots of people who have a very strong Uranus or afflicted Uranus are going to have quite erratic in nature. And generally when Uranus moved into Aquarius, which is some of these younger kids, they don't have the verbal capacity to work in mercurial kind of terminology. They're working from the higher mind already.
Interesting.
Just an additional point is that Uranus is now in Taurus, so it's in its fall. So it doesn't operate like it should in Taurus. So Taurus represents primary industry, food, shelter, the five senses of. It's kind of erratic at the moment, so we're also getting that into the mix now. Yeah, definitely.
Food, shelter, a little erratic right now. Yeah, you could say
food,
so.
shelter, the weather. He is the sky god. The sky god, after all, he is the weather. So we're getting, the hailstorms and the heat, the sort of erratic patterns of weather.
Yeah.
As well. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in because I thought it was really important now. So it doesn't operate like it should while it's in Taurus.
No, and it's very conflicting in Taurus because Uranus is all about the unconventional, and Taurus is all about sticking to the traditional, tried and true, tested way that everything has always worked. So it's about moving into the future, but doing it in a way that's stable and not too radical, even though Uranus wants to just radically revolutionize everything.
So could that also be kind of this tug that we feel? Like we've talked about this, is this a continuous tug of like, I need to do things this way because this is the way I've always done them, but holy shit, that's not working. So let's go over here and do things new. And there's this continuous tug of war between how we've traditionally always done something, whether it's baking a cake, making an essence, whatever, versus, wait, that doesn't flow right now. Now I have to be able to be on the spot and spontaneous and move with a new flow. And there's this real tug of war at the moment on that.
There is, and also too, when you're moving within the new flow, it's Uranus will want to deviate so strongly from the typical path. But with it being in Taurus, it can't deviate so much that it's a completely, like it needs to be somewhat on the same page, but it needs to create a new page as it goes.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an opposing force. Another interesting thing about Uranus is where it is the higher octave of Mercury. It represents the highest level that our mind can ascend to. So whenever Uranus is about to turn retrograde for its little yearly period of retrograde, that degree before it goes back, that is the highest degree of the zodiac that Uranus will reach that year. So that is like when you reach, that's the peak. That is the current peak, and thought cannot transcend that bar until the next go round. It's a constant evolution upward on the mental plane. Uranus is also associated. Yeah, it's really cool. Uranus is also associated with rebellion, probably because of its association with revolutions. So I thought this was an interesting quote.
And absolutely, when it comes to or merges with Pluto, it's very forceful. And you can see one of our unfuckers has Uranus conjunct Pluto, and they're out there. And I think I know who that is. Danny. And the mid-60s revolution.
Revolution! Vive la revolution!
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to go into Pluto. I'd like people to jump in because there's lots of people that this is going to affect. So we've got, generally, as you can see, as I touched on before, when Pluto comes closer to Earth, it's a shorter cycle. So in 1995 to 1997, Pluto was in its called perihelion period, which means it was closer to Earth, and that means it sort of went through those signs fairly quickly, which is kind of great because, you know, it's but now we're coming into Pluto in Capricorn, which will be there until 2024. So we're just starting with Pluto as the slowest moving planet.
You're drunk.
Now, this slide's
Go
really
home, Pluto.
interesting
You're
as well.
drunk.
Exactly. Go home, Pluto, you're drunk. So in the top right, you can see that Pluto, like the other planets, they basically, not only do they orbit the sun, they also go up and down the ecliptic. So if you expand out the equator and you look at it as the ecliptic and the Earth is kind of tilted, these planets are going to operate in their biorhythms as well.
Yep.
And if you can see, as those planets cross the line, if they're going southward, then it means that they're crossing over their south nodal point, and when they're coming up and rising again, they're hitting their north nodal point. So at the moment, we have Pluto and Saturn in Capricorn, and they both have a south nodal point in Capricorn. So we're basically crossing that barrier at the moment.
So define that. Just so what does that mean? Because it sounds dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun. Well, the south node is related to the past, and so we're seeing this kind of tug of war, this kind of regression to the past values and traditions and how we've always done things. But there's also that I just want it over and done with because we're coming into a new age kind of feeling. So it hasn't quite, once those signs go past that south nodal point, yes, it's coming into a lull, but they're also in a new moon phase as well. So they're going to start to germinate and things like that. So we can see that Pluto and Saturn, which is our, you know, perception of reality and our purpose, are coming to that crossing point. But things like technology and our higher feeling have already crossed their own paths and they're on the way up again. So kind of our body and our reality is behind everything else that's happening. All right. So yeah, this is what I was talking about. So the Pluto cycle on the sort of orbiting the ecliptic is 24,000 years. So it's equivalent to an astrological age. And so sort of axis is definitely around matriarchy and patriarchy. So our lowest point in history for 24,000 years, and particularly for Capricorn, it's definitely an old structure that's been around since 500 AD. So it's a fuck of a long time. So moving on, because that might be beyond some people.
That's now we're getting into that's
so
one of those tangents, and we're gonna
we're getting into that, and I think we'll go into more detail about that in future shows when we concentrate on the actual waves.
Yeah.
Generally, we're at a crossing point with Pluto and Saturn, and particularly when they're going to conjunct. So we'll just get into Pluto. So Pluto in Leo was in that period for 20 years, and it comes off the back of the Pluto and Cancer generation. So we've all heard about the silent generation. You know, there are very strict gender roles. There's probably a little bit of unsatisfaction with those gender roles, but the babies that came in between 1938 and 1958 are the pre and post World War II babies off the back of the First World War. So you can see there was an explosion of entertainment TV. So Leo is ruled by the sun, and it's you want to shine. These people want to shine. They've come out of the war period. When these kids come of age, it's a really happy period, but it's also a lot of consumerism as well.
Mm-hmm.
like
Interesting.
they're coming off the back of, you know, the Cancer generation, which is we've got to hold on to what we've got. We crave emotional security, whereas these kids coming out of the post-war era is like, we don't want to go through that again. We want to shine. We're here for a purpose. They're here to develop their self-expression in an individual way, and they're quite a powerful generation. It's the baby boomers, essentially. And they're here to shine, but I guess the lessons for this life are to impart their wisdom to humanity on the collective. That's their access point. So it's not about the self now, it's about the collective and passing that wisdom on to the collective. Right. Now, Pluto in Virgo, poor Pluto in Virgo. These guys are born 56 to 72. So on top of the heady kind of period of Pluto in Leo, baby boomers, it's all about, you know, let's buy a new car and we've got to have the new Triumph motorcycle and it's fast cars and Greece and whatever. It's the Pluto is like in Virgo is like the hangover of that. Everything's like, you look at the top of the period and it's like inverted, and Pluto are just like atoning for all this damage done through the war and through their parental generations. And this is where
That's interesting.
Uranus,
That's actually really interesting, because there is that kind of so just recently I was reading something a couple of years ago about kind of like the atonement for the baby boomers who did this, and then the next generation had to kind of come in and go, okay, we can just tidy this back up again. So I guess that's us. That's pretty much our generation here. Have we lost Jules? Jules, we've lost you. Amina, do you want to jump in and I don't know if Jules can even hear us because we can't even switch the slides because Jules is controlling the slides. Jules, come back to us. Hold on, let me just see. Pull up the participants so I can see. She is here. She's just frozen completely. Oh, no, she's not here. Do you guys want to jump into our next planet, Amina? Just without slides for the moment.
Right. Okay, so we'll start with Neptune, because I'm more on the Neptune, and Jules can finish Pluto stuff. But I'll go up to where she got up to and see if she comes back. Okay, so yeah. I'm starting with Neptune. After World War I, we had this boom of, what was it like? It was like wanting to indulge in everything as much as possible. So Neptune, looking at the idea that all we're going to do is grow, spend money, drink and party. This is like the Charleston times.
I was just going to say the flappers, the Charleston times. Women like,
yeah.
Cut off them skirts and show some knee and
let's make money and be glamorous and let's kill it, because the Great War is over, right? So Neptune was in Leo during 1914 to 1929. What happened in 1929, right? What happened? Everything went poof. Boom. All that money went down the drain, and everyone ended up with nothing. I mean, there was nothing left to share a party with. So we ended up with this Neptune in Virgo generation. So Neptune entered Virgo first in 1928. This was when it was saying, all right, enough's enough. This is unholy. This is seriously like you've gone so far against what we have been preaching that your generation has now got to stop. Look what's happened. And we're on the verge of religious fanaticism, Puritans preaching what's right and what's wrong, who should be living on this planet and who should disappear, who should go. We are the best. No, we are the best. No, everyone's saying like my leader says, we are the best and you guys have got to go, right? That's what's going on. It's this Puritan age. And Neptune has fantasies about, on the darker side, fantasies about ethnic cleansing. And on the brighter side, it's about doing what's right for the greater good. So whatever the greater good needs, we will sacrifice, we will work hard, we will put off what it is that we are supposed to, like what those people did before. They just spent everything for no good, for all ill. And we're going to do it for good. We're going to spend everything on something that's good. So in their eyes, yeah, that was what it was. So we'll go back to Jules because she's back. Are you back, Jules?
Jules is back again.
Jules?
Like my computer completely crapped out. So lost my train of thought.
Jules.
Yeah.
Click the next slide and away we go.
Okay, so back to Pluto in Virgo.
Carry
on.
I
missed what you were saying. So basically, many trailblazers who started questioning the system. Anyone we know? We're born in this period.
All of us.
Pretty much all of us. A lot of us in this group. Most of these guys are very self-sufficient, generally because mothers were going to work. Mothers started leaving the home after the Cancerian age to a degree. It wasn't fully fledged yet, but it was starting to happen in that. So generally these guys seek transformation in services and health, alternative health as well. And this is where the very, very first computers came in.
Yeah.
So any other notes on that before I move on?
Nope.
But there's definitely a feeling of atonement and wanting to like fix the world, like mend stuff. My generation, Pluto and Libra. So this generation saw the highest rates of divorce ever. People started rejecting the kind of traditional family values. Women were going to women's lib. People wanted to go to work. They're generally the children of the Leo generation before them. So the guys born between 38 and 58, that 20-year generation. Then we see a quickening happening. So generally these guys are the peacemakers, a little bit people pleasing as well, but they're also the justice seekers and do want justice and equality. They're the equality fighters. Just go down there. Okay. Pluto and Scorpio. Megan, this is your generation. Do you want to have a chat about this one?
Sure. One thing that kind of stood out to me when Anne was speaking earlier about how we're not where we need to be, like we should have been further along, and then it repinged again when you were talking about Pluto and Virgo. I think my generation, Pluto and Scorpio, we're supposed to be in a place where we're not. And I think part of that is most of us, I mean, I have an older father, so he was Pluto and Leo kind of guy. But a lot of us had parents that were born in the Pluto and Virgo generation. And when they were kids, a lot of them had to be very self-sufficient. They had to figure things out, on their own, like they weren't shown what to do. Now you have a generation, Pluto and Scorpio, who our parents were like, well, we figured it out, so will you. But I'm also going to coddle you because I wasn't coddled, so now I'm going to coddle you. So we don't know what to do. And I think we didn't get where we were supposed to be. And now we're having the alpha kids, and their operating system isn't compatible with the one that we were supposed to take out but didn't. There's a lot of deep-seated fear that runs through this generation. There's a lot of emotional trauma that's stored in this generation. There's an intense need, I find, for people in my age group that we want to make change, and we have this emotional attachment to changing the world that we live in, but we don't know how to do it. So we feel very immobilized by the fear, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything.
No, that my eldest son is born in 91, and that pretty much describes him and all of his friends. like I've met, Gabriel would come over and when he came to Malta last summer, and his girlfriend, and then he's brought other friends, and there is that generation that is exactly like that. It's I think paralyzed by an inability. It's like standing on both sides, can't move forward, but can't stand to be back here. Like this doesn't work. Absolutely fucking doesn't work. But they can't. How do you move forward? It's as if the stepping stones to get from here to here were not laid out for them. So they're hover in this in between, and neither one feels right. Neither world works for them, and therefore there's like a deep-seated what the fuck. And that's all I can call it, is just this deep-seated what the fuck, as in nothing makes sense on either side of it.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny you say that, because Pluto is a fixed water sign. So if you think of fixed water, it's like the Mariana Trench, right? It's the deepest place you can go.
This is as deep as you're going to get.
That's a good point, Jules.
These guys get stagnated. They get stagnated in the depth of things.
Yes.
Quite easily.
We do. And another interesting, like where you mentioned Mariana's Trench and how deep it is in the fixed emotional waters of Scorpio. We are kind of the elder millennials. We're not quite the 90s babies, but we definitely do have a foot, like Danny said, we have a foot on one side and a foot on the other. There's actually a comedian that did a special called Elder Millennial. It's really quite well done, but we fit into that definition. And we get branded a lot as like the flippant, flaky, very, what is the word I'm looking for? Like that we lack depth, that we're very surface skimming folk, when in reality, people with Pluto and Scorpio are extremely deep. Their water is just frozen.
They're immobilized. This feeling, and that's, my son is Cancer with Pluto and Scorpio. I mean, there's a depth to him, an emotional depth that is so incredibly deep. But that's the word, frozen, immobilized. That there's this. He has spent the last 10 years fighting to move forward, fighting to find a way of moving forward, financially, emotionally, on all these different levels, and it's like swimming through molasses. They can't seem to be able to get a toehold into anything that's substantial, that works for them.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting too, because the earlier people born in this group, they have a lot of scorpionic influence. Not only did they have Scorpio or Pluto in Scorpio, there's Saturn in Scorpio. There's also the South Node in Scorpio. So there's a lot of like generational emotional trauma that's passed down to these children very early on, and they don't know how to process it because they're too young. And then you slide over to the later end of the scale in the early 90s, and that's when you have Uranus and Saturn and Neptune all in Capricorn. So there's a lot of confusion about structure and how am I supposed to fit in this world with all this trauma that I'm holding. So you see a lot of these people, they just tap out and disassociate.
Yep.
It's like they have PTSD from emotional childhood trauma.
Exactly. It is like they were born with PTSD.
Traumatized. They are born traumatized.
And you and I have talked about this a little bit, about that and I'm talking specifically because I'm really talking about those 90s babies, those early 90s babies that it's if they came in and their operating system, it's like they came in expecting something, and whatever they landed in was not what they expected, and they turned off.
Don't forget that very early in their adulthood, they got straddled with debt. Debt that they still can't pay off.
Yep.
And this is a Scorpio, 8th house. It's other people's money. It's debt. It's loans. It's how you have to work. What are you going to do with the money you borrowed? How are you going to pay it back? And it was much easier to get a loan in those days. I mean, when they became adults, it It's like they were giving away credit cards all over the place. So yeah, have a credit card, here you go, have a credit card. They're just like in debt, constant debt. No wonder they can't move forward.
That's right. And I mean, I look at it this way too. My generation has taken on this, like what you're talking about with the debt and how it's just impossible. You know, you have a good job, you have a good education, but you still struggle paycheck to paycheck because the interest, it's basically extortion. It's financial extortion. Then we turn to our parents, help. How do I navigate this? And then you have the Virgo and Pluto people who are like, well, we did it. I had my house and my this and my this and my this by the time I was 25 and everything was tickety-boo. Yeah, it was, but this is a different time.
That doesn't count anymore.
And then we're like, what?
Yep.
So it's interesting.
Absolutely.
So this is when things kind of change post 95 in terms of the kind of energy shift between then. You get this free-spirited, expanding young people coming through that have just got a completely different mindset post 95. So in society, hang on, I just need to navigate. In society, the ninth house or Sagittarius is ruled by religion. So we're going to see either with the positives and the negatives. It's a bleak side of religion. This is when all the pedophilia and stuff started coming out. Adults from previous generations started exposing predators. You know, the breakdown of religion started happening back here.
Don't forget religious fanaticism.
And religious fanaticism.
And like the terrorist attacks from the Muslim scaremongering and that sort of stuff started to happen. So right in the middle of this generation is when 9/11 happened as well. So the kids coming into this generation are pretty philosophical and rebellious. They're here to expand the mind and the world. They're fiery. They're a mutable fire, so they can. If you look at the fire signs, like Aries is kind of the spark, the initial spark of things, whereas Leo is kind of the earth fire. It's a log fire in the middle of winter. It's a fixed fire. Whereas the Pluto and Sagittarius guys, it's the bushfire. It's a wildfire. They're really exuberant, but sometimes they can be a little bit erratic. Really
burn everything up in their path.
Well, I have a huge stellium of 5 planets in Sagittarius, and Pluto went over every one of them. Talk about having a death every year of some sort in my life. It was like some part of my life came to a real end. You can't go back, and then you have to go forward but deeper, and then it goes over another planet in Sagittarius, and that represents another aspect of my life that just dies and has to be reborn again. So it's birth and rebirth as well, right? So like everything had to be transformed in my life pretty much. All my inner planets are there, and you know, except for my moon, but it's still affected because of its square. So I was like, I think in this period of Pluto and Sagittarius, I've got like all my stories, all my life stories, the most deepest, darkest, most interesting ones come from this era. It was hell. But the thing about Pluto is it kills off everything that it's touching, and then it starts again. But what you get at the end of Pluto is something that you'd say, yeah, I'd go through that again. I kind of like what transformed afterward. I like what transpired. Yeah. You know, I needed that. That's the hindsight of Pluto. And with my Pluto Sagittarian transits, I can totally agree. Yeah, every single one of them. I'm glad.
It wasn't pretty in the moment. It wasn't pretty in the moment.
Nah.
But the hindsight is very crystal clear. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It sounds like you went through purification through fire in that period.
Yeah.
It's kind of,
And maybe
would have
some
been,
black goo was thrown in.
and black goo. And someone said in the chat something about the Neptune overlay, and I think this is really important as well. But let's move on because we've only got Pluto in Capricorn, which is next. But this is a period that we're in now. So it encapsulates the Gen Z and the Alpha generations. It's the breakdown of patriarchal structures and reality. One of the previous slides when I said it was coming through the South Node, it just feels like an ending, and things feel barren, sign. But the kids coming through this generation will build the new. They're the master builders as well.
The master
So the
builder.
guys can't. You know the Lego movie?
Everything
is awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Everything is awesome. These guys coming through are not probably conceptualizing what we're going through now. They're starting to. These younger kids, like 2008, 11, 12, no, younger than that, 11, 10, 11 and under.
Yeah.
So, Megan, you've got little ones. My guys are in Sag. They're like trailblazers in some ways.
I see a lot of Pluto and Capricorn kids, not just in my own children, but in the daycare that I work at too. Like, this is the age group that attends there. And like we were saying earlier, these children, their operating system and the old operating system that should have been removed by my generation and wasn't, and now we're having these Pluto and Capricorn children. It's not compatible. It doesn't work. No. Goes into like how we were saying, like they tap out, and physically they're here, but mentally they're not. Like, these kids, they really are not made to function in the society that has been created over the last several decades. I think some of them, like, emotionally just cannot bear the way that the world is. I see a lot of kids that are too young to be depressed, that have depression. I see a lot of children that are too young to have anxiety, that have intense anxiety. I see kids, a lot of these children, it's interesting, there's some Pluto in Libra, there's some Pluto in Scorpio, and then there's some Pluto in Sagittarius parents at the daycare. And you can see a bit of the difference. In the Pluto in Libra, you see it squares this generation, the Pluto in Capricorn. So Jules is Pluto in Libra, but her energy would work well with her Pluto in Sagittarius children. Older Pluto and Libra parents that are having Pluto and Capricorn kids, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Like, these are just opposing energies and they don't compute. And you see like the hover mother, the helicopter parents that just micromanage every little detail because they're so codependent with their children.
Yep.
And then these kids don't know how to function without being told what to do or having that expectation to meet. And you just see them, they don't know how to play, they don't know how to be kids. And then you have the ones with the Scorpio parents, and it's like there's this like emotional drive. It's like almost intuitive on the children's part that they need to complete something that their parents couldn't do. It's like there's some kind of an emotional expectation that's unsaid, but it's felt. And it's like, well, you didn't break the mold, so I guess I have to.
Well, this goes into like what I was saying earlier in the conversations that Anne and I've had, and then you can clarify this a little bit. Is that fact of overwhelmingly the feeling that these kids came in and what they expected to arrive in wasn't here.
There's a bit of resentment too, I think. Like, I think these kids have like a little bit resentment toward their parents. What the fuck? Why didn't you have this ready for me?
And that's exactly it. Anne and I have talked about this like so much because you actually even see it sometimes in like newborns. And they literally, I've had, where you hold little ones, and friends of ours just had a baby a couple of months ago. And at one point, he was a day old, and I was holding him, and his little blurry eyes looked up at me, and I literally got this overwhelming thought of like, what the fuck is this? That was it. Like, that's all I got from this little sweet, brand new born baby, was just this overwhelming of like, I didn't sign up for this. What the fuck?
Yeah, and there's very few people with the lights on, as some kid said to me one day. You know, they are in this terrible desert of sleepers, because these kids come in wide awake and they can see everything. They see energy, they see all sorts of stuff, and they look around them and they just see these sleeper avatars walking around the place, and it's terrifying for them.
Yeah.
It's so, yeah, there's an awful lot of reasons why they spend, you know, they just keep the avatar here and do other stuff. And we know we have groups of kids who consciously do stuff together in other realms. It's very, very interesting. What they do, what their, you know, their notion of jobs. I think you're quite right there, Megan, that they have to, you know, speed it up, guys. We're way behind. And stuff that we haven't sorted or let go of, they have. And this is one of the big problems with these kids, is they're overburdened with responsibility.
Absolutely. And that is...
Yeah, and now you see the, you know, goodness gracious, that I've seen kids taking to the sofa with depression because of the state the world is in, that's been blasted at them, that we've got, 10 years or 20 years left. And then, you know, one kid said to me, what's the point of getting off the sofa? You know, we're stuffed. So, you know, if they're not feeling overburdened with responsibility, they go past that point to where they actually are giving up. The rates of suicidal ideation and actual suicide in children are getting, they're at younger and younger ages. I've seen 4-year-olds who are suicidal. Now that's extraordinary. You know, we've never had those rates before. And they just can't, because they can see everything, you know. It's very, actually really emotional. Yeah.
And their support crew isn't here. And I think that's it. I think these kids came in expecting, besides the energy or the operating system, they came in expecting that the support crew would be standing there. And they would be like, hit the ground running, let's go. And they came in and it was like the support crew was not there. And there seems to be a gap. And Anne and I have talked about this so many times over the last few years, where there was that gap. And it's that gap that we talk about in the 90s. And where those kids came in and they were so fucking unprepared and so shell-shocked that they were literally, entire generations of kids were taken out. Like they came in, they were so PTSD'd by what they experienced. So then when these next round come in, their support crew from the previous generation isn't standing. And it's a lot of us, and the older generations are the ones who are trying to double up time to be there for this really, really young crew that are coming in, and try and help those who are just so taken down by this to be able to stand up so that they can carry some of the weight.
Yeah, so there's definitely like a disconnect. So this is only one planet. So once we get into Neptune, which is the emotional body, you'd be able to see that detachment and kind of discordance between the two. Like the desire and the emotional state isn't in sync at all.
Yep.
And also the mental state is way beyond. So we'll move into Neptune. And then we'll try and put this together, but I know we don't have a lot of time.
We knew this was going to happen, guys. We knew this was going to happen.
So
that's slow.
Okay.
We can always play catch up. It may won't be 4 waves or 5 waves. We may have to end up being 10 in the series to get all the information out. We'll just play it as it goes.
Yeah, definitely. So, Amina, do you want to
Yeah. Okay. So
So I'll try and ramble off the dates.
Yeah. I'll go as fast as I can, and I'll tip my head to you when it's time to change page. But just to say that those outer planets, these outer planets that we're talking about, are supposed to be for our inner journeys. Yes, they do affect us in the outer level, but consciously they affect us on our inner journey. And if we don't work on those inner journeys and learn the lessons that these transits bring us, then we really aren't doing our job for the next generation. And we're supposed to be doing that job so that when they come through, they can take over and take the reins. But we're not doing it because we're taken on by the distraction. We're easily overcome and easily overwhelmed. So what I'll do now is I'll explain how Neptune works and what it does in its waves through the generation of illusion, disillusionment, and then try and see where we can get some balance. But obviously when we go into the episodes where we deal with one generation at a time, there'll be so much more thorough detail. So I think I can afford to skip through a bit. So we had, when Jules went offline, I did mention a bit about Neptune in Virgo from the recession.
1938 to 1943 this is.
Well, we've got 1928 as Neptune arriving in Virgo. And
I'm talking about, Pluto and Leo.
Yeah,
but,
so
this is like a subset of Pluto.
So I'm looking at 1928 to 1943, and there's about 15 years there of everybody going through post-recession and entering World War II. And when we entered World War II, there was a reason to set up that illusion. People could sacrifice and make way for the greater good using what they thought was the most purest form of self-sacrifice, to go and enlist and to sacrifice those goodies that you were brought up with but now have to let go of. And the generation that was born with this grew up with very sparse things, like very little toys, hand-me-down clothes, and it was all about, I did all that because I did it for you. I did it for the world. I did it for the greater good. And so what they don't realize is that the illusion is broken. And when they grow up and they're coming of age, they realize that nobody really appreciated it. So what did I do all this for? Why did I suffer so much if nobody appreciated it? So if we go to the next one. So then we come towards the end of World War II, we start to fantasize more about our relationships. We've got people going into the service to fight the war, and romance and relationships are developing. And the movies that are coming out, that was all about, having an ideal romance, having an illusionary, loving romance with somebody. So you look at Rita Hayworth and you look at Audrey Hepburn, and you see these beauty queens having the most beautiful black and white movie romances, and everybody wants one of those. And we get Neptune in Libra wanting that most ideal connection. But what we don't realize is that Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, can you go back?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Fred Astaire there and Ginger Rogers, they really didn't get on. No. I mean, they look like the most lovely couple. But in reality, when this generation came of age, they found out that these two guys hated each other. He was too harsh on her, and she didn't like how he controlled her, and she wanted to go to be an actress, not a dancer, and he was just picky and everything.
Yeah. And he was kind of the epitome of that, of like everyone, Fred Astaire. Fred Astaire. And yet he was one of the most hated actors in all of Hollywood because he was terrible to all his leading ladies. And Ginger Rogers was one of the only actresses who was at least strong enough to put up with him for more than one movie.
And she never trained to be a dancer.
Nope.
She wanted to be an actress. So when she said, look, I'm leaving this duo to become an actress, that's what I always wanted to do. It was like, bye-bye, see ya, I don't want to see you again. And they hardly ever met after that. So everybody's illusion has broken. And also the people who married these like ideal romances, you know, I've only known him for 3 days because that's the amount of days I've seen him during the war. And, you know, then I've married this man and he's just like, you know, what are you doing every day? You're just reading the paper and you're having a cup of tea and you just, you know, this isn't what I imagined it. So they feel very unfulfilled. Next slide. So then we get to 1956, 1957, as Neptune is leaving Libra, it starts coming into Scorpio, the depth of the soul. These people want to reach down and deep. So between 1956 and 1970, we've got disillusionment and illusionment about trying to get deeper and deeper. And don't forget, the Cold War has made people kind of suspicious.
Yep.
So there is always this like, either you're anti-war or you're anti-Russian or anti-German or anti-Japanese, or, you know, you've been set up with an enemy and you've got to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And the escapism that Neptune in Scorpio brought about was drugs, sex and rock and roll. Try and get away from it and try and urge your soul to express itself in either sex, drugs or music. And so here I have a picture of the Doors because they're trying to go down into their soul to open the door and let it all out. But the thing is that they also feel quite disillusioned as well because the world isn't interested.
Yep.
The powers that be aren't interested in what these people want. Okay, next slide.
They had voices in their music, but they learned very quickly in that generation that they had no voices in society. They could speak to their peers through their music, but the older generations, the politicians, etc., they had no voice. They were not listened to whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. And then here we have I'm born at the early sign of Neptune in Sagittarius, and it goes from 1970 to 1984. And this is the generation where we want to find the most ideal goal, but we see ourselves looking out into the galaxy, into the universe and beyond. We want to be superheroes, super champions. We want to fight the bad guys, the villains. And we think everybody wants to do that with us. Everybody wants to delve into this mystery. Everybody wants to have like a space gun and beam me up, Scotty, and go out there and you know, fight the forces of evil. And you can see here that, you know, Scooby and Shaggy, did they really want to buy into this? No. You know, Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you? Fuck, I want to be lying behind the door and shivering. I don't want to go and deal with this ghost or this villain.
I want to eat Scooby snacks and stay in the van, thanks.
Yeah, but they're like, Scooby, you've got to come. So the Neptune in Sagittarius illusion is that everybody is assumed to be following the same path, but what the disillusionment is that no, people have their own paths to follow, and everybody may have their own inner truth, which could be different from yours. So we're not a team fighting the bad guys. And then we get to Neptune in Capricorn, 1984 to 1995, and now the emphasis is on like RoboCop or Transformers. We want to build machines. We want to get back down to earth, build the right machines, build robots to do things for us. We also want to have better family structures. You know, we want to go back to, we've had our hippie grandparents or parents. We've had our, we're done with all of that. We want to have just real old-fashioned time here. We want to have, so they've got these ideal family expectations where this is what roles are, and we form a structure, a family unit, a structure. But the other side of that is that they also want to just let go. So they feel this disillusionment because underneath it all, something is tugging and pulling the carpet out from underneath them. And these setups just kind of dissolve. You know, the family's breaking up and it's going to happen anyway. And you're going to have to learn to deal with the new family structure. And so it's kind of like relationships, marriages for this generation is really hard because they can't set up a family unit. So you've got mothers with children from different fathers as well. And it's at a very young age where they want to be like settled. They can't be settled. So it's kind of hard. So next slide. Then this is my son's generation, Neptune in Aquarius, which started in 1998. So sorry, Capricorn went until 1998. And then Aquarius is 1998 to 2008. So this is just a very like short, 2012. So this is like, you know, a 13, 14 year period where this era, we started to have the internet, we started to go online, we wanted to do things like gaming in a group, but we also wanted to connect with people from all over the world and say, you know, like, yeah, we stand together as humanity. So the disillusionment is that people born in this era, they want everyone to be treated equally and with justice, everyone treated the same. But what do they see when they turn on the news? They see ethnic cleansing. They see walls being built at borders. They see people going into war and fighting other people because of their standards and their expectations. And all this generation wants to say is, why? Aren't we all the same? Why is one country shooting down the people of another country? Why are there killings? Why are people being trafficked across borders? Why are people being killed? Why is there like slavery and things like that? Aren't we all equal? And so they shut down. And this generation, they wanted to connect using technology, which is very Aquarian, to connect with strangers all around the world. But in the end, they just end up in their own little box. They don't want to connect with the world around them because they want to get away from it. So they can only connect into a game or into some sort of like form of like, you know, a movie, a game, music, like get everything else out because it's not matching my paradigm. So the disillusionment happens very quickly.
Well, this generation is interesting because for me, so I've got my two daughters that fall into this, being 16 and 14, and all of their friends. So they have this good group of friends. They all come here and they hang out at the house, and they're all in that from 12, 13 up to 16, 17 age group, which fall bam into this. And I can see when I watch these kids
from any background.
Yeah, and they're from a vast assorted background, like growing up in Africa, growing up in England, growing up in Malta, growing up in Australia. And this is a generation, when we see the propaganda, so, and I'm going to go political here, talking about that extreme left propaganda that we're seeing coming out of the States right now, that is so asinine insane. This is the generation that's getting pulled into it. And it's because of their disillusionment, because they see the fact that, but everyone should be equal, and we should all be treated equally, and there should be justice for all, etc. It's very easy to take that and twist it into this narrative that we're seeing, and these kids are confused because on one hand, they already feel that yes, equality is, everyone should be treated equally. And then you have they're bombarded by these narratives and by these propaganda agendas. And it's like, okay, well, I feel that it should be this way, so they're saying this, so therefore I guess I should agree with them. And there's a lot of confusion with these kids. And then you have to, like, for me, I sit back and I talk to them and I explain to them, okay, well, let's break down why they're talking about this. Okay, and I need you to comprehend, yes, you're right on this level, but the problem is there's a deeper agenda here of why this narrative is being pushed. And then they go, oh, and there's this, holy crap, oh, wow, I didn't know that. Okay, now I understand why mom goes off on a tangent saying, don't you dare fucking start using those like little cliche words, etc., because I will literally lose my shit on you. It's a very confusing time, and the agenda makers are playing on it very, very heavily with this generation.
It's like everybody needs an identity with a different label, So my label's
Yep.
this, your label's that, and we've all got to accept these labels exist. But why is there such a division between these people creating these labels in the first place? What's that all
Exactly.
about?
Exactly.
When they realize what it is another wave of disillusionment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe that can
absolutely.
help
Can I
them
just
balance.
quickly add, when we went back to the biorhythms and the ecliptic path, that this is a generation they're crossing their emotional body. Their emotional body is now disconnected. It's going through that ecliptic path and hitting the node in this generation. So you've got that really high innovative, emotional body, which is the collective, or they just tap out.
Yeah.
This is where internet use became really heavy as an escape.
As an
And
escape.
also the video games as an escape.
Yep. Okay, next slide. We'll go to Neptune in Pisces, which started in 2011, and then it goes on until 2025, 2026. So we've got Neptune in Pisces. This is anyone born after mid-2011 is going to feel like this. In some way, I'm a bit like this. I relate because my sun is conjunct Neptune very, 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 very tightly square my moon in Pisces and my ruling planet in Pisces. And this means like I feel a bit like I'm Neptune in Pisces. So I feel like I really connect with this generation in some way, but they are difficult for other people. It really is difficult to understand because Neptune in Pisces basically summarizes everything from all the other signs and puts it together, and they feel it all. So imagine there's 11 other signs that they're going to feel, and they take on all of it. These are the ultimate empaths. Just by being born in this era, they are naturally empathetic, and they feel. What they do is they feel. They don't feel the intended emotion. They feel the underlying emotion, the core emotion that's coming through underneath. The kinds of emotions that adults have buried deep and don't acknowledge in themselves, like repressed anger. They feel it like it's a really loud, like foghorn. That's how they feel your repressed anger.
Yeah.
That's how they feel your repressed frustration. It's really loud. And it's really heartbreaking to feel when you don't feel the weight of it yourself. You bury it and you won't acknowledge it. So these are the children that need to find a certain amount of balance, because they can easily switch off and go into their dream world where the illusion of life is way better than the reality.
Yeah.
And these guys haven't experienced any other outer planet conjunctions to Pisces. So they're very fresh, very like little oysters under the sea, like super fragile. And if anyone tries to take their pearl, they clamp up. That's what they are, little oysters. And if deep sea divers want to go down, they'll look at you, they'll say, what are you here? What are you here for? What are you here for? Like, I don't want to, and they'll clamp up. So the only way that they can really, really like get in tune and bring out what they know and what they feel is not through school systems, because that is timetables where the bell goes very sharply at the end of an hour or 45 minutes and you have to leave and go on to another topic. They want to dive deeper and go deeper and deeper and stay where they are until they're done.
Yep.
And they want to swim in the ocean of their experience. So the best experiences that they need is some kind of structure, like a routine of, okay, this is waking up time, this is going to bedtime, this is the time when you're learning. But learning doesn't have to have a timetable stuck on it. So you can free flow with your expression. As long as you eat at this time, you're fine, because they can burn out by just complete self-neglect.
Yep.
Like they don't even want to entertain their physical world until you show them that that's what they've got to do. So things like dance, where they really can connect into their body, arts, where they can express their feelings and emotions and yours everybody else is. Nature, where they can communicate with, they can feel the energy of the trees, the birds, the animals, water, because that's natural for Neptune. Animals, they can communicate very well with animals, and it seems like animals love them very much. Very like you can give a child who's born with Neptune in Pisces a pet, and they will be more attached to the pet than to you, because the pet is being honest with their feelings.
Yeah.
Astronomy, the whole world out there is like another sea. So to explore it further is also interesting for them. That's like how they want to connect with science. They can connect it through astronomy because there's mathematics and everything in there. There's also mathematics in music and dance. And music is a way for their soul to feel like it can be released. Otherwise, they'll compress. So drama I put there because as a drama teacher, I know that empathy can be reached through drama. We can role play. So when you take on someone else's role in life, you get to feel their feelings. You get to step inside their shoes. So this generation really needs these kinds of subjects and topics to explore, not to hit the button and say, okay, time up. Now you've got to do this. Now you've got this. Now you've got that. Now you've got this, and you've got homework. Forget it. They'll go far further and further into life and understanding and knowledge if they're given some more free flow to express this. So
Yeah.
I'm not surprised why so many are taken out of school. They just don't fit. They really don't fit.
No.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that to me, the movie that represents this generation is one that came out just last year, and that's Ready Player One. And the Unfuckers group, we have not sat down and watched it yet. John, we're going to have to pull that off. We're going to have to do one special night where we do Ready Player One, now that we've got the flow of the video going better. The opening statement, as the opening scene of the movie, and the main character of the movie is narrating and giving you the look into that world, to me defines that generation of like everything out there in the real world is just so fucked, and nothing. It's bleak, it's cold, it's a mess, and everyone, the moment they have any time, immediately goes into that VR world. They live their lives in the VR world. They sleep in the real world, they eat in the real world, they bathe in the real world, they do whatever it is they have to do to earn money in the real world, but they actually live their life in this virtual reality online game where they can interact with everyone and be whoever they want to be, look however they want to look, do whatever it is that they want to do. And I think that movie is like the personification of this generation we're talking about.
Yeah, so virtual reality is invented when Neptune is in Pisces, and it's taken off. When Neptune was in Aquarius, we had Xbox and we had online gaming. So this is like developing the communities. You know, Xbox, you can have 4 players. Wow. Before that, Capricorn, we came out with PlayStation. So 2 players can play, or 1 player can play by themselves, but you can climb the mountain, Capricorn, get to a level of achievement. And before that, when Neptune was in Sagittarius, we had little simple games like Pac-Man, where you just go forward and eat and you win. Da-da-da! So, you know, like Mario Brothers, just keep going forward, bounce, 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 going, you know, like that's it. That's all you do. So Sagittarius needed adventure, Capricorn needed to climb, Aquarius needed friends, and Pisces needs to feel it, real.
Yep.
Right? So
very interesting with the video games.
They need to,
very interesting.
Whatever they do, they must dive into it. Really dive in.
They definitely have to immerse into it. They're you know, definitely water. Mutable water.
Yeah. Alrighty.
Okay.
Anne, is there anything you want to add? Because you deal with this age group a lot. Does that resonate with you, Anne?
Is Anne frozen? I think Anne's frozen. We just lost
She
Anne.
is.
As soon as you said Anne, it was like, oh, boom. That's it. She dropped. Internet is sucky at the moment in Europe. It's just, I don't know. It's all
Yeah.
sucky. So let's make a choice here and now, guys. Do we dive into Uranus? Because we're at
I don't think
5 minutes to the 2 hour mark, or do we hold off and do Uranus in the next one? Because I don't think we're going to do it justice. I don't, because I think Megan's going to feel really, really rushed. Megan, I don't want you to feel rushed that you can't cover the topics. So we just put that to the next show?
Yeah, definitely. Uranus gives a different nuance, a flavor of this revolution and
Exactly.
Rebellion.
Could I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Instead of doing Uranus separately, because of the outer planets, it does move the fastest. It takes 7 years for a sign. So if you look at the larger waves of the generation, you have multiple Uranus signs. Maybe cover them within the waves, because that's where it's relevant.
Yep, we can do that.
Maybe I'll just flick through some of these things. If anyone resonates with their particular year, they can just make a note of their Uranus kind of sign without going into the detail. So we've got Pluto and Leo, Neptune and Virgo, Uranus, Taurus and Gemini. That's what they look like on the chart, but we won't get through all of that. We still have Pluto and Leo, and then Neptune moves into Libra from 1942, and then we've got Uranus in Cancer, Uranus in Leo, and then Pluto in Leo, and we've got Neptune in Scorpio on its own, with Uranus in Leo. Hoping I'm not moving too quickly. Still Pluto in Virgo, and we've got Neptune in Scorpio and Uranus in Leo, Uranus in Virgo. So this is where we have a Uranus in Virgo and Pluto in Virgo conjunction, and a very strong Pluto and very strong Uranus is going to be quite revolutionary. And then moving on, we've still got Pluto in Virgo. We've got the Neptune in Sagittarius coming in from 1970 within that generation, and then Uranus in Libra. Now still Pluto in Libra, Neptune in Sag, Uranus in Scorpio and Sagittarius. I really want to dive down into the Uranus because it's very, very interesting.
I know, and we can't get into it. We just can't. We can't. And I don't want it to be rushed because I know there's so much information there.
We have to give it justice.
Yes, exactly.
Still Pluto in Scorpio, Neptune in Sagittarius, Uranus in Sagittarius. So we've got a Neptune-Uranus conjunction, which means that they're in the same sign. So those two planets are going to kind of merge their energies. They're kind of like a combination, and it's self-driven. It's not something that happens from the outside. It's something that happens from within. And then Pluto in Scorpio, we've got Neptune in Capricorn, Uranus in Sag, Uranus in Capricorn, Uranus in Aquarius from 1995, with Uranus in Aquarius reaching its ecliptic south node point in Aquarius. I think I've got that wrong, actually. That's a Neptune, sorry. Neptune in Cap, Uranus in Capricorn, Uranus in Aquarius from 1996. And the dates in the middle of the circle are just the Neptunian dates, just for reference. Then we've got still Pluto in Sag from 1995 to 2008. little bit more free-spirited, but still Neptune in Aquarius. It's a little bit detached. And then you've got Uranus in Aquarius. This is those two are still in the same. They're in the same sign. And then Uranus in Pisces from 2003 to 2008. So we have like a crossing period from 2008 is very kind of stark in some ways when Pluto goes into Capricorn. And this is where we are now from 2008 to 2024. I'm going to have to move this because I can't see the dates. And we've got Neptune in Aquarius, 2008 to 2012. And again, that 2012 date comes up as a crossing period in terms of emotional body, and how we feel after 2012 is quite interesting. It's another switch. And there's a bit of crossover. So a lot of these outer planets will retrograde quite often and sit between two signs for over a year. So you can see Neptune in Pisces officially dips in 2011, but we don't really see the effects until after 2012. And then we've got Uranus in Aries and Uranus in Taurus, where we are now. And we can see with the Neptune in Pisces, we've got the films like Moana and Aquaman and, yeah, the water-based film. And that's it, guys. So I'm going to stop my share and come back.
There we go. So we'll get more into Uranus as we go through the generations. I think that's the best idea, Megan, is that we can do more focus on Uranus as we run through the generations, because there's a lot of information there, and I don't want to just push it through and try and quickly run through it. I don't think we'll end up doing it justice. This was awesome. I hope the audience enjoyed this as much as I did, because I just learned so much. It was just kind of crazy. You make those connections, little dots pop up, and all of a sudden you can connect those dots and go, oh, isn't that interesting, when we look at things like our parents, grandparents, down to our children, and you know, very, very interesting stuff. We have not set a schedule yet for the series of this series, but we are going to try and do them every 2 weeks, so we don't have these huge gaps between. We're going to try and do them every 2 weeks, depending on everyone's schedule. So I will sit down with everyone over the course of this weekend maybe, and we'll see if we can't set an actual schedule up, and then we can go through and everyone will know. Especially, you know, for example, like those who are the baby boomers might be really, really interested in the baby boomers, and if they have alpha generation grandchildren, they might be like, oh, well, I really want to make sure I don't miss that show. So we'll try and get the schedule out so everyone can see exactly each one in the series and when it'll take place, and can schedule yourself accordingly. Get your sleep the night before if you're in North America, so you can wake up early in the morning. I want to thank everyone for being here. That was so awesome. This is going to be a really fantastic, and I can already see the next series that are going to come out of this series. There's going to be other series that are going to be born from this series, and I like to think that we're kind of tackling this in a different way than the usual astrology way of looking at things. So I'm kind of hoping that maybe we're going to break in some new ground here and help people kind of comprehend a lot more to this than knowledge of the general public would have on the whole. Thanks, guys. It was so awesome. We will be back. So, rundown. Sunday night. Tomorrow night is Fringe night, of course. I will be doing an interview Monday night with an unfucker who's got an amazing project that they're about to launch that I'm really intrigued with. We won't do that one live because our schedules are going to be a little all over the place. But I will have the video of it out by Tuesday at the latest. Wednesday night is the Unfuck It discussion. And that's it for our schedule for this next week anyway. So I'm going to say goodbye. We'll say goodbye to Twitchland and everyone out there. stream. And we will see everyone. The Unfuckers will see you tomorrow night for Fringe. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.